Well, good morning, everybody. To get us started today, I wanted to talk first about things that are happening on the other side of the planet. And what we're looking at here is part of the Western Pacific and the Indian Ocean, and we're keeping an eye on this powerful super typhoon that will be moving its way over the next few days toward Taiwan. But there's a couple of other things I want to take note of here. The first is look at how strong the trade winds are leaving Australia, going this direction across the Indian Ocean. This is a part of what we call the positive phase of the Indian Ocean dipole. It often happens whenever we have an El Nino developing. They tend to go together, a positive ENSO event and a positive Indian Ocean dipole event. And what's interesting about that is the trade winds right in through here along the equator are actually quite weak right now as well. And that's an indication of an El Nino event. So there's a lot more going on in this image besides this powerful typhoon. But it is quite monstrous. And the Himawari 8 got a good picture of this, or excuse me, the Himawari 9 satellite got a good picture of this super typhoon just continuing to barrel forward. And what it looks like here over the next few days is it will weaken as it moves toward Taiwan from 145 knots, 150 is what is expected to strengthen to today, down to 90 knots as it approaches. So just want to keep you aware of some stuff happening half a world away. But right now, this is, I think, the first time this year that the National Hurricane Center has put out a tropical update. Just something kind of fun. They've really expanded their capabilities, and they're now issuing a 7-day graphical outlook. It used to be 5-day. And what we've got here is, as we can read, a 10% chance of some sort of cyclone formation. It is not expected to be tropical, but it is expected to kind of kick up the winds a little bit and start to deliver some precipitation, possibly heavy precipitation just off the coast and maybe into North Carolina, which would be critical given the drier conditions in parts of central and western North Carolina right now. But one thing I'm just going to have to continually keep the narrative going on is the fact that the ocean temperatures are still quite warm in the Gulf, in the Caribbean, and here in the Western Atlantic. And of course, we've been talking about what's going on here with the cooler water merging in and around the Gulf Stream. But I think this is just an important view to keep an eye on. So here's our developing El Nino. Here's the very warm water in the North Atlantic, especially here off of the coast of Europe. This could be a critical player for Europe's summer. And then we notice here, this is what's left of our negative PDO signal, all big topics we will be talking about in tonight's in-depth report and future reports. Now, last night, just kind of switch gears here. I want to show you some satellite data. This is just as the sun was rising this morning. And you can see the frontal boundary here. This is the one that prompted the frost in parts of the UP, northern Wisconsin, sections of lower Michigan, and then right here just off of the eastern Great Lakes in the interior of New England. But there's still some smoke mixed with this, but I mentioned last night because we watched storms erupt from Texas and New Mexico through Colorado, Wyoming, and into Montana. Multiple days now of very large storms that have ripped through this particular area. We can still see the wildfire smoke from Alberta and British Columbia, from the last few weeks still sitting here in the central part of the United States, just lingering. So this was just, some of these storms were very large. I can see some of the overshooting tops here, and they were hailers. If we take a look here at the storm reports, 61 reports of hail. There were 8 tornado reports as well, but to see where these storms kind of lined up here, plus a few in the Snake River Valley, some in parts of Nevada and Utah as well. And some of the hail and reported here was between 2 and 3 inches in diameter, so there was a lot of damage done to this particular area. But if you look, here is your last 24 hours of total accumulated precipitation. And in fact, we should have an update on this. I'm recording this just after 6 a.m. There we go. And so this is the newest update we got on total precipitation out of that. Here's what we're watching. Again, down over Florida, this is the potential beginnings of what could be this, this weak system that rolls up the coast. It was great to see some storms get into parts of Missouri and this side of Kansas. But outside of that, let's just add up the last few days. So this is now adding the past 3 days to this. In fact, we should have an update. There we go. So this is 24 hours, 72 hours, and this is the last week. Now remember, we still are capturing from a week ago the front that swept through parts of the eastern Corn Belt, delivering much needed rain to Indiana, Ohio, pockets of southern Illinois, but parts of Kentucky and Tennessee, which desperately needed it as well. But the point here is look how much rain we've had fall just in this section of the country in the last 7 days. And a lot of this is coming from severe storms. So later on this morning, we will get an update of the newest drought monitor. I'll include it in my in-depth report tonight, but I expect to see some changes in this particular area. What we'll need to watch carefully is where the drought will be expanding in the newest report when we look here in parts of the Midwest. That's going to be an area that's going to be most critical to watch. But I think there's going to be some change in this monitor right along this corridor that I'm kind of highlighting. All right, where are the storms the next 3 days? Same spot. Okay, this has been our constant theme here. Here's today's convective outlook. So back to Montana, straight down the Front Range, all the way down to the Rio Grande. All right. Then you go from there into tomorrow. It's the same corridor. And then we go there into the 27th, and it is the same corridor again. As we just look out over the next 7 days, that is where the action is. Remember, we've lost the flow here. So what we're getting is this high plains convection. This is very common when there's very weak flow in the atmosphere to get this kind of convection. We're getting a lot of preferred heating along the mountains, and this initiates a lot of convection. You then have just the natural surface convergence of the flow coming off of the high plains and the mountains here, and it just pops, it just goes, and it's really a beautiful part of our climate system to see this happen. But it's amazing to think that it turned out to be some weaker flow. Not strong southwest flow, but weaker flow that continues to break this drought. You know, I had mentioned that when you get that strong southwest flow, it lights up this whole area, but it pushes the dry line farther to the east. Well, if you don't have that, then that dry line can sit really far back to the west and deliver the rainfall here. The other side to this is on the eastern side of the Sierra Nevada storms, getting into the interior of parts of the Pacific Northwest storms. We just keep adding more rain to Montana. And for the most part, in the last several years, Montana has really struggled for spring moisture and summer moisture. So this is going to be certainly a highly anomalous year compared to previous years for that state. Finally, this is where we're expecting that heavy precip to go. South Carolina, North Carolina. We're going to watch this system right now on the high-res European model to see what it's suggesting. So high pressure dominating. This was the source of the cold air this morning around the Great Lakes into New England. And as I just play forward, storms just keep popping right here and right in there. Now, if you just keep a very close eye here, this is not going to be some large low pressure system. Okay, you don't even see a tight spacing of isobars or any deep lowering of the pressure, but it's a system that is going to curl up and it's going to live underneath this high. So the high's coming in like that, and the low's coming in like this, and so together that's pulling the moisture into southern Virginia, straight toward the Appalachian Mountains in North and South Carolina. But there's going to be a hard cutoff to the north of it on where that precipitation will be. So that precip just sits there, and we go through. So by the way, where I am in time, this is Saturday, Sunday, into Monday. We just continue to see that. So now we play into next week. This is Tuesday into Wednesday, and you just see flashes of green in the afternoon and evening. That's showing us where these storms are going to pop. What I'll be watching for carefully is, do we bring more moisture farther into Minnesota, maybe northern Iowa, Wisconsin, when we get out there about a week from now? And how does this all translate beyond that? Because we look at here at the very end of the model run, and we start to see some flashes of green across a broader area that is expected to be extremely dry up until this point. Now, do not rest a lot of hope on this. This is not the change in the pattern that we are anticipating. But what is going on at this point is that the ridge that's been sitting here is expected to move a bit farther to the west at this particular point. But this is not the end of this dry stretch. I believe that this dry stretch for a lot of folks here in the central U.S., really in the Corn Belt, might last maybe to the 6th or 7th of June. So another 3 or 4 days after this. This is the very tail end of one model run. So just to kind of distill it down, this is the probability of getting at least an inch of precipitation over the next 10 days. So it has increased here, and we've now seen this move a bit farther to the north. But look at Montana into parts of southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba, that region right in through there, seeing an increase as well. Those drier areas, as we like to point out, using the same system here, but this is now the probability of getting less than a half inch. We've now seen the probabilities being reduced through the I-states and reduced through the lower Mississippi River Valley, but increased here in the Great Lakes East. That's where we've now seen a stronger, drier signal going forward. And again, why this is so critical is just that over the last 30 days, we've now seen several areas in through here that, again, are probably sitting in this 20 to 60% range. We have some very dry conditions in this part of Nebraska, getting into southwestern Iowa, and then several locations throughout Missouri. Look at lower Michigan. And that's not to skip over any other place, but I'm just keeping my eye on several of these locations here, and then straight down the gut of the Mississippi. All right, from there, the pattern by the next Wednesday. Do you see how far apart these isobars are? There's one. Actually, these are iso heights, but we can let them be synonymous with isobars. The farther they're spacing, the weaker the wind. And here we are in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, and they are really spaced out. So we need to see this change, that they've got to come together to increase the winds. And as we go out there and just keep playing, this is June 3rd, 4th, 5th. I know we're going out there pretty far in the run, but what I do notice is that the ridge, which was there, now has an axis here. So it's moved over the spine of the Rockies. We start to get some northwest flow. Now the question is June 7th early enough to get the benefits of northwest flow coming across this part of the country? Because there's still some hints that this is going to be convergent, as we keep talking about, and make it drier. And then we expect this to kind of run around the base of this trough, meaning that the East Coast will not get extreme heat out of this. But there is going to be a time period at the beginning of June, right here, where there's going to be a lot of heat baked into this ridge that's going to hit this critical part of the Corn Belt. So let's go talk about that. First of all, the week 2 precipitation. I think the most significant change, if you're in the dry spots, is that we've now seen a bit of a reduction in how dry the anomalies are in this area. All right, but still, this is the region in all of our models expected to see those storms. Okay, it's pretty clear that that is the pattern we're currently sitting in. Now, on the temperature side of it, as I mentioned a moment ago, this is what we're dealing with this morning. This is about 6:15. We still have our frost advisories that are out for these places, but we're going to really bring those temperatures up pretty quickly here. Flood watch for this part of Montana. Over the next 7 days, we are going to be adding a lot of heat into this corridor of the United States. It's amazing to think that there's going to be more GDDs picked up in Mitchell, South Dakota than down here in Norman, Oklahoma in the next 7 days. That tells you the extent of the warmer air that's here and the much cooler air that's to the south. So from there, let's go take a look at what those high temperatures are going to do. So thankfully, we're going to push this cooler air out of the east, and it moves out by Friday, getting into Saturday. A lot of this is not stress yet, okay? But the cooler conditions. This is all cloud cover driven, storms. The Southwest just has a trough. I mean, this is an incredible start for the Western United States. This is Sunday, getting into Monday. You're going to watch as we go to Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. This is the time period, the very end of June, the last day of June, May, the first day of June, where we're going to be seeing these temperatures start to crack into the low to mid 90s in this area. Now, issue will be there's not rain coming in at this point. So to see these kind of temperatures, this is going to really crank up evaporation rates, which you can see here. And by the way, let's show you that color bar. That's in that 1.5 to 2+ inch range. And might get some stress on the crop. In fact, the Climate Prediction Center continues to identify, June 1st and 2nd, this corridor as having a slight risk of excessive heat, which in this part of June would be in the low to mid 90s. All right. From here, real quick, I'm going to show you their precip outlook. They've not changed this much. This corridor continues to see the risk of heavy precipitation to start the month of June as well. Finally, the longer range temperature outlook just continues to show much of the same that we've been discussing. So that's out today 10 through 15. It's that same problem. Very weak flow is resulting from the warmth north and the cold south. So there's no temperature contrast to speak of. We get out here, things start to shift around as that ridge moves back to the west, and this is going to set up the beginning of the change that we need to see in the pattern to deliver rain to places that have missed it. One last thing, I do want to show you the latest on South America because these rains coming through southern Brazil out of Argentina are going to be critical. So this is through Friday into Saturday, here's Sunday into Monday, and early into next week. This is really Monday into Tuesday. We're going to watch the rain spread into Mato Grosso do Sul, out of Paraguay, over toward Paraná, Sao Paulo. This is going to get into an area that this rain will really push the safrinha crop planted later in the southern part of Brazil's growing areas to kind of have a strong finish. So we need to watch this carefully. All right, have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you again tonight in the in-depth report. Until then, enjoy it. Thanks.